Hello and welcome to our presentation. We're Group 5. I'm Emily, and our research proposal is about the behavior of African elephants with poaching in their past. Specifically, we're wondering how past poaching events affect stress levels and behaviors of wild African elephants, as well as their interactions with humans while in captivity for rehabilitation. We hypothesize that when we bring these elephants with poaching experience into captivity for rehabilitation, they will be more stressed when humans are around than elephants that haven't ever witnessed or been affected by poaching. We'll go into more detail later in our presentation, but basically we will be using two different main measures of stress. One will be the concentration of fecal glucocorticoid metabolites, or FCMs, which is a hormone related to stress. We predict that elephants with prior poaching exposure will have higher FCM concentrations than the elephants with no prior exposure to poaching. The other measure we will be observing is stereotypic behaviors, which are repetitive movements that are an indicator of stress. We predict that elephants with prior exposure to poaching will show more of these stress-related stereotypic behaviors than the elephants without prior exposure to poaching. With regards to their interactions with humans, we predict that the elephants with prior poaching exposure will initiate less human interaction behaviors than those with no prior poaching exposure. The specific behaviors we'll be measuring are based on the ethogram from Rossman et al. And includes things like trunk positioning and initiating contact with humans.
Hi, I'm Ayana, and I'll be providing some background on our project. Humans and elephants have been in conflict for a long time, so we think that this history could influence the interactions between wild captive elephants and their human caretakers, especially when considering poaching and human-induced trauma. Poaching is the intentional slaughter of elephants, mostly for their ivory tusks and because of the threat they pose to farmers. Human-induced trauma, the focus of this research, is defined as a strongly negative behavioral and physiological response to human events, specifically poaching or poaching attempts on elephants or those in their herds. Here's the thing, understanding trauma in elephants is still in its infancy. Not much was found on how poaching impacts elephants, let alone how they interact with humans after poaching events. We do know that elephants have extensive long-term memories, complex social dynamics, and high social intelligence. Because of poaching and habitat loss, elephants have experienced social collapse over the last few decades, which we know from Shannon et al. And this has led to human-induced trauma on an individual and social level. We know from Bradshaw et al. That elephants display similar symptoms of PTSD that humans do, including depression, abnormal startle responses, unpredictable asocial behavior, and hyperaggression. Historical human-elephant relationships have shaped a lot of the current conflict. Elephants have large territories that overlap with settlements and farmland. The ivory trade is also an incentive for poaching. However, Langbauer et al. Has shown elephants can learn to avoid certain areas and people. McComb et al. Show that elephants can distinguish between the voices and appearances of men, women, and children and adjust their behavior according to threat level. Men are typically seen as a greater threat due to historic poaching behavior. Another consideration is the impact of poaching on elephant society. Bradshaw's work showed that human actions have meant that entire elephant communities have been traumatized and left them unable to practice a lot of their customs surrounding mourning, grief, and other important social behaviors. McComb et al.'s research shows that this is mostly due to the death of the herd matriarchs, or leaders, who are responsible for teaching the herd and passing on social customs and knowledge, much like a grandmother passing on family stories and culture. Humans have tried to fill this matriarch role in conservation efforts, which further muddies human-elephant interactions. Because of this research, we think that wild elephants who have experienced poaching will have much higher stress levels in captivity due to being surrounded by humans compared with wild elephants who have not experienced poaching. However, since we also know that elephants can distinguish between individual humans and assign different threat levels to them, it's also possible that there won't be a significant difference in the stress levels between the two groups.
Hi, I'm Chase. I'll be covering the experimental design and ethical concerns for our research. Our control group is wild-born adult female African elephants from a wildlife reserve with no prior poaching experience and little to no known human exposure. Our independent variable is wild-born adult female African elephants from a wildlife reserve that have experienced a poaching event. Our dependent variables are the measured stress levels of the elephants and the behavioral observations while in a rehabilitation facility. Now for the methods. Our research will utilize 14 wild-born female African elephants in need of rehabilitation. There are 2 treatment groups, one group with 7 elephants who have little to no known human experience, and 7 elephants that have experienced a poaching event. These elephants will be transported in the same ways, using techniques to reduce stress during transportation. Once the elephants are at the rehabilitation center, they will be given a week to acclimate to their new living conditions to try to control for stress caused by these new conditions. The elephants' living conditions will be controlled to show no signs of variation. Also, the handlers will have a randomized genderless design to block any associations elephants may make, which could lead to variation in stress levels. Behavioral observations will be collected twice a day by the same observer during a morning and afternoon care routine. Behavioral observations of the elephants will be recorded and referenced with the ethogram by Rossman et al., and stress level observations will be referenced with the ethogram from Fuchtong et al. The data for stress levels will be collected through analyzing fecal glucocorticoid metabolite concentrations through sampling the elephant feces. We will be using methods provided by Jakowski et al. And Weber et al. Over the course of 2 weeks of research. Now I'll discuss our ethical concerns. The selected elephants are in need of rehabilitation, so they will be transported to a rehab facility anyway, then released back into the wild. During translocation, the elephants will be sedated in order to provide the best experience for the elephants and reduce any increased stress to the elephants while on their journey to the rehabilitation facility. There will be a 1-week adjustment period, and the experiment will only last 3 total weeks, which is good because the research is only taking the elephants away for a short period of time. As for considering the 3 R's, we cannot replace the elephants with other kinds of test subjects because we are specifically testing elephant stress. We cannot reduce the treatment group because we are already pushing the limit on the smallest statistically significant population size. And finally, our experimental design has been heavily refined to even account for the influence of gender on elephant stress levels.
Hi, I'm Dora, and here is our justification. African elephants have been affected by the poaching industry for their ivory tusks, which has contributed to the decline of their population and is thought to have caused human-induced trauma. After elephants experience a poaching event, both scientists and handlers need to know how these traumatic events affect elephants in the long run when it comes to transferring them to rehab centers. We hope this study discovers how human-induced trauma from poaching impacts wild elephants in captivity. Additionally, understanding these effects could apply to the tourism industry. With the popularity of tourism, more is being understood about the negative impact it has on a variety of species, as stated by Scott. This could also apply to rehab centers open to the public. Understanding the effects of trauma on elephants in rehab could improve elephant welfare in captivity and possibly improving strategies to reduce poaching. The ethical considerations of human-induced trauma and the consequences of our actions allow us to further recognize the importance of this work. With this study, we might be able to see if rehab centers that are open to the public are helping or doing harm, as stated by Scott. However, this could lead to large companies not wanting to fund research if it is demonstrated that sanctuaries cause more bad than good. The true hope is that companies will prefer the well-being of elephants over corporate money. Another big reason to discuss the effects of poaching is the general destruction of elephant society, which causes traumatized elephants to not be able to participate in customs like grief and general socializing. This is usually caused by the death of a matriarch, which interferes with general elephant behavior. These issues add elephants to the list of species humans have affected by excessive hunting, and it is why this research will be able to show the long-term trauma, but help elephants in the long run.
By now, we hope it's obvious that there is a lot of relevance in studying the behaviors of these elephants who have such traumatizing backgrounds. It's so important for their health and well-being, as well as for the safety of humans, and it lends helpful insight for many other species who have been impacted by destructive human behaviors. Thanks for taking the time to listen to our presentation, and we hope you learned something. Here's our citations.